Welcome back, my tape gun romantics and shrink wrap sociopaths. I am Lucius Voss, your overnight oracle, your HR violation wrapped in human skin. This is Spectral Margins, and you, dear listener, are officially past the point of no return. Tonight, we dive headfirst into Part 3 of Shipping and Handling, the cursed conveyor belt of a saga written by RedBadAndy. If Part 1 was a safety violation and Part 2 a workers' comp claim, then Part 3? Well, let's just say the boxes aren't the only things being flattened. As the night shift crew sinks deeper into this warehouse of horrors, questions pile up faster than unprocessed inventory. What's in the crates? Why is it breathing? And most importantly, why did you ignore the sign that said, "Do not open"? Once again, the nightmare is made flesh by our returning dream team. Geoff Sturtevant, Victoria Voss, and me. Forklifts be damned, they're moving emotions. So clock back in, click off the emergency lights, and if you hear something skittering in the rafters, just assume it's a promotion opportunity. Let's continue, shall we? My mind raced through possibilities. We were in the parking lot, presumably visible on security cameras. How long before someone noticed? Before Matt sent someone to check on me? "What's your name?" I asked, trying to buy time.
"Lisa."
She replied after a moment's hesitation.
"Mike Donovan is my brother."
"Lisa, listen to me. There's something wrong with this place. It's not safe." I trailed off, realizing how insane it would sound to describe what I'd witnessed.
"I don't care. If he's still in there, I am going to get him. You are going to let me in there."
Lisa's voice cracked with desperation. She pressed the gun to my back and I started walking back to the main door. I had no idea what her plan was, but I had to think of something to save both of us. I got back to the door and looked at Lisa and she nodded. I pressed the button on the door and as it opened, I saw Jean. She was just stepping outside, a freshly lit cigarette on her lips as she was walking out at the same time. Her eyes flicked from me to Lisa, then zeroed in on the gun with clinical detachment.
"Put that down before you get yourself killed,"
Jean said, her voice flat and emotionless. Lisa's hand trembled, the gun now wavering between Jean and me.
"Stay back. I just want to find my brother, Mike Donovan. He worked here and now he's gone."
Jean's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. Recognition, maybe a hint of pity. She took a single step forward.
"I knew Mike. He was a good guy."
Lisa's face crumpled.
"What do you mean, was?"
Jean gazed at Lisa with a contradictory mixture of compassion and indifference.
"Mike violated protocol during maintenance yesterday. There was an incident." "Bullshit!"
Lisa's voice rose dangerously.
"What does that even mean? Where is he? What aren't you telling me?"
She pointed the gun straight at Jean, who stood there, looking indifferent to the threat.
"You are going to take me inside and we are going to find him."
Jean slowly raised her hands as if finally acknowledging the gun pointed at her and responded emotionlessly.
This way.
I followed both of them back into the warehouse, nervously looking around to see if anyone was there to help. I knew we were in danger, but I felt conflicted. This woman was just looking for her brother. It sounded like she had some idea of the danger he was in. I wanted her to have answers and closure, but I knew what it meant to break protocol and try and help. If anything, in order to save my own skin, the rules dictated I had to try and detain her for trespassing. I followed along in a conflicted daze. Distracted as I was, I barely registered the flashlight behind us near the fallen tablet that Jean had left. We walked along for a while and everything was strangely quiet. We arrived at a side entrance near the storage rooms. We stopped moving and Lisa looked nervous and asked,
"What is this? Why are we stopping?"
Jean turned around and flatly stated,
"To say I am sorry about this for you and for Mike."
I was confused and Lisa looked concerned. A deafening crash erupted behind us as the warehouse door flew open with violent force. Before I could even turn around, a mountain of a man charged through, moving with terrifying speed for someone his size. In one fluid motion, he slammed into Lisa, knocking her forward with such force that the gun clattered across the concrete floor.
"Target down,"
the man announced in a cold, methodical voice. Lisa struggled beneath his massive frame, gasping for air as he twisted her arm behind her back with practiced efficiency. I stood frozen, shocked by the sudden ambush. I took a step back and almost put my own hands up. The large man looked up at Jean and then at me and growled out a brief introduction.
"Charles Stanton, Security Chief. I see the firearm, so I presume you were taken by force, and have not failed to detain the target yourselves."
His voice had a strange air of accusation, like it was our fault for not arresting the woman who had us at gunpoint and making him do his job. Stanton suddenly yanked Lisa to her feet. His face was a mask of professional detachment, but his eyes? There was something predatory in them that made my blood run cold.
"Civilian trespasser.
Jean explained, brushing dust from her uniform.
Armed as you saw. Took us hostage."
Stanton nodded his head and looked at me.
"Since the trespasser was apprehended, you are free to leave now. Considering the circumstance, I will speak with Matt and authorize you to take the rest of the night off. Go home and get some rest. Leave this to us."
I looked at Lisa, who had been handcuffed, and then at Jean, who was grimly watching as Stanton was logging something on his phone. I know she had just held me up at gunpoint, but something felt wrong about leaving her with this Stanton guy. I asked what would happen with her.
"Local authorities have been contacted,"
Stanton replied, his voice unnervingly calm.
"They'll deal with the trespasser appropriately."
Something in his tone didn't match his words. It did not feel like it was the standard procedure for handling a trespasser. He was not even making a call, and why did he want me to leave all of a sudden? It was just this mountain of a man with dead eyes claiming authorities had been contacted.
"I just want to know what happened to my brother."
Lisa shouted, struggling against her restraints.
"Please, Mike, are you here?"
Stanton's massive hand clamped over her mouth, silencing her instantly.
"That's enough,"
he growled, all pretense of professionalism vanishing. I took a hesitant step forward. Maybe I should stay. I mean, I was involved, so I should probably give a statement or something. Jean shot me a warning look, almost imperceptible, but unmistakable in its intensity. Her eyes said everything her mouth couldn't. Get out now.
Your statement can wait until tomorrow.
Stanton said, his attention returning to me.
Go home. That's an order.
I looked at Lisa one last time. Tears streamed down her face, her eyes wide with terror and pleading. I wanted to help her, but what could I do? If I stayed, I'd likely disappear too. Okay, I said finally, backing away. I'll see you tomorrow, Jean. Jean nodded grimly at me and then turned back to Stanton and the captive Lisa. I reluctantly left the warehouse on unsteady legs, my mind reeling with conflicted emotions. The sound of Lisa's desperate cries echoed in my ears as I stumbled to my car. My hands trembled as I fumbled with the keys, dropping them twice before managing to unlock the door. Once inside, I sat, motionless, staring at the warehouse's blank exterior. What was happening there right now? What would happen to me if I'd stayed? I felt sick, guilty, and helpless. I started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot, glancing repeatedly in my rearview mirror at the building receding behind me. No police cars approached. No sirens wailed in the distance. Whatever Stanton meant by authorities, it clearly wasn't the local police department. Back home, I felt a creeping sense of paranoia. I double-locked the door behind me and drew all the blinds. I thought I could ignore everything and press on, but more and more happened every day. I did not know how much more I could take, and my heart sank when I realized I had another day of that madness in store for me tomorrow. I tried to sleep, but couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lisa's terrified face, heard her desperate pleas for her brother. I kept thinking of the containers, the amber fluid, the thrashing inside. The pieces were starting to fit together in my mind, forming a picture too horrifying to believe. Around noon, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. 7-Eleven on Westfield, 20 minutes. Come alone, Jay. I hopped out of bed, threw on clothes, and raced to my car, checking over my shoulder every few seconds. The parking lot of the convenience store was nearly empty when I arrived. I spotted Jean's sedan parked at the far end, away from the building's security cameras. She sat behind the wheel, sunglasses on despite the overcast day, her hair down for once instead of in its usual bun. I almost didn't recognize her.
Get in,
She said when I approached, not bothering with a greeting. I slid into the passenger seat, noticing her bloodshot eyes and the slight tremor in her hands as she gripped the steering wheel. "What happened to Lisa?" I asked immediately. Jean stared straight ahead through the windshield.
You don't want to know.
"I do," I insisted. "Please, just tell me." She turned to face me, removing her sunglasses. The dark circles under her eyes seemed deeper than ever.
She's gone, like her brother. And no, you can't help her, and neither could I.
My stomach twisted into knots. "You just let them take her? What the hell are they going to do with her?"
What would you have had me do?
Jean snapped, a rare flash of emotion breaking through her stoic facade.
Fight off Stanton? That man has killed people with his bare hands. Unfortunately, I've seen it.
She shook her head, running trembling fingers through her hair.
There are two types of people at PT. Those who follow orders and those who disappear.
What are they doing in there, Jean? I whispered. Those containers, the maintenance period, all of it. What the hell is going on? Jean was silent for so long, I thought she wouldn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible.
The Proud Tailor isn't just a shipping company, and it's definitely not a regular tailor.
She turned to look at me, her eyes haunted.
The name is a sick joke. They don't make clothes. Or if they do, it's secondary. They make something else.
What?
I don't know exactly, and I'm only telling you this because I trust you're the only one who would believe me and not tell Matt or anyone else. I saw inside a container. Just once. The lid was ajar. I couldn't help but look. I closed it up before anyone saw, and somehow the security cameras missed my infraction, because I am still here and still breathing.
I couldn't believe it. Jean had seen what it was we were shipping. I knew she was struggling, but I had to ask all the same. What did you see? She hesitated, and then eventually responded.
It was just a brief glimpse. I still am not completely sure I saw what I saw, but it was enough. Enough to know that we are shipping parts for something, and some of the parts were alive.
I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. Her words hung in the air between us, heavy with implications too terrible to fully process. Alive? I whispered. She swallowed hard.
Yes, what I saw was alive, I think. 7 years is a long time. I've picked up bits and pieces, overheard things. The Proud Tailor apparently has facilities all over the country. They ship these parts between locations, hundreds, maybe thousands of them. When they are done doing whatever they do with them, they move them to the red boxes. I think it's whatever the final product is.
That's insane, I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I knew they rang hollow. The containers, the maintenance period, the screams, it all pointed to something unimaginable. The containers that leaked yesterday, I began, remembering the amber fluid eating through the concrete. Something was moving inside, thrashing. Jean nodded grimly.
Temperature control is crucial. When they warm up, you start to hear things.
She trailed off, shaking her head.
That's why cold storage is so important. Keeps whatever is inside dormant.
We need to go to the police, or FBI, or something, I said, reaching for my phone. Jean's hand shot out, grabbing my wrist with surprising strength.
And tell them what? I can't prove anything. I still don't fully trust my own eyes on what I saw. Never mind the fact I told you about PT's connections.
You mean with the police and that guy Stanton? I muttered, remembering the mountain of a man who'd appeared so quickly. Jean nodded.
Ex-military. And now he's security for PT. But that barely scratches the surface of what he does. He has friends in the police department and City Hall. If you went to the authorities, they'd either laugh you out of the building, or...
She left the rest unsaid. So what? We just keep working there? Keep moving those things? I felt sick at the thought. Keep watching people disappear during maintenance? Jean stared at her hands.
I've survived this long by following the rules. By not asking questions. By looking the other way.
Her voice caught slightly.
I'm not proud of it, but it's kept me alive.
There has to be something we can do, I insisted. Some way to expose what's happening.
You don't understand.
Jean said, her voice dropping to a whisper.
The Proud Tailor has clients. Powerful people whose names show up on the delivery lists. If you knew some of the names, you might understand how hopeless this is.
She shuddered, visibly.
It doesn't matter. Just listen. I told you what I saw, but I don't know everything. Forget I said anything, except the warning. I don't want your death on my conscience. Please, if you know what's good for you, remember, no one is looking out for you. And if you disappear, it'll be another name on the list of those I couldn't protect.
She shoved me out of her car and drove off. I stood there, reeling at what I had just heard. I had no idea what the hell to do about the insanity I was embroiled in. I returned home and did not even try to go back to sleep. I had to think of something. There had to be some way of finding out for sure what was going on and how to stop it. Hours later, I was no closer to a solution, yet the clock ticked ominously closer to the start of my shift. Reluctantly, I forced myself to leave, my mind reeling as I headed back to that monstrous warehouse of hidden nightmares. When I finally arrived for my shift, I hesitated. Fear and anxiety were choking me, compelling me to turn around and flee. I convinced myself that I would find out what was really going on tonight. One way or another, I would see what was going on, and if there was a way to stop it myself, then I would. I did not think I could just wait, watch, and move those hideous boxes anymore. I went inside and saw no one else near my station. Jean's car had been in the parking lot, and I knew she had been there. I grabbed the shipping log and saw that a truck was already in the dock. I decided to try and play out the day like normal and see what I could find out. I figured it might be beneficial that I was alone for the time being. It might give me an opportunity. I got to the loading bay and I was still alone. The truck sat there, loaded with those ominous black boxes that had haunted my thoughts since I had first seen them. Everything was eerily quiet. No Jean, no Matt, no one around. Just me and those boxes. As I approached the truck, a plan started to take shape in my mind. A part of me screamed to stick to the rules, unload the boxes, put them on ice, and walk away. It was the safe path, the one that ensured survival. Yet, I hesitated. Jean's words echoed in my mind, as well as the thought of Lisa and her brother vanishing. I was torn, caught between the safety of protocol and the urgency of what I knew deep down needed to be done. I quickly inspected the ceiling, locating the security cameras. There was a blind spot near the back corner of the warehouse where the loading dock met the cold storage area. If I could move one container there, my plan might work. I grabbed a dolly and approached the truck, my hands trembling as I maneuvered the closest container onto it. The digital display read -18 Celsius, a proper temperature according to protocol. Whatever was inside would be fully dormant. The container felt impossibly heavy as I wheeled it slowly toward the camera blind spot, my eyes constantly darting around for any sign of movement. The corner was dimly lit, shrouded in shadows cast by tall shelving units. I positioned the container against the wall and stared at it, my breath coming in shallow gasps. This was it, the moment of truth. My fingers hovered over the container's edge, searching for any gaps. There had to be a way to open it without triggering an alarm. I examined the seams carefully, noticing a series of recessed latches along one side. The container's surface was unnervingly cold, frost forming around my fingertips where they touched the metal. I held my breath and released the first latch. It clicked open with surprising ease. The second followed, then the third. With each one, I expected sirens, shouts, Stanton's massive form appearing from the shadows. But there was only silence. The final latch gave way, and the lid rose slightly, a wisp of frigid vapor escaping into the air. I hesitated, Jean's warnings echoing in my mind. Once I looked inside, there would be no going back. Knowledge was dangerous at PT shipping. I held my breath and lifted the lid. The stench hit me first. Chemical and organic, like a hospital morgue. The container was filled almost to the brim with that same amber fluid I'd seen leaking before. Only now, it was almost frozen solid, like some grotesque amber-colored ice cube. And suspended within it, perfectly preserved, was what appeared to be a person. At least it looked like a person. The face was intact. A man, maybe 40, his features frozen in an expression of terror. But below the neck, things became wrong. The right arm ended at the elbow, replaced by what looks like a hollow cast or shell for something else. The surface had been seamlessly fused to the flesh, with intricate patterns etched into the metal that seemed to pulse with a faint inner light. The chest had been partially hollowed out, filled with a network of tubes and mechanical components I couldn't begin to identify. Where the lower body should have been, a framework of metal and lattice of what looked like porcelain and plaster extended downward, forming a grotesque approximation of human legs. I recoiled in horror, nearly dropping the lid. This was beyond anything I could have imagined, not just transportation of bodies, but bodies that had been mutilated. I remembered what Jean had said about how they shipped parts and somehow some of them were alive, and they put things together and sent them off in the red boxes. If this was a part, just what the hell would the final product be? As I stared in a morbid fascination, the eyes suddenly snapped open. I stumbled backward, crashing into the shelves behind me. Blue eyes, unmistakably human, stared out from that frozen face. The amber fluid remained solid, yet somehow those eyes moved, tracking me as I scrambled away. The mouth of the person opened, but no sound came out. It was like someone trying to scream underwater. The sight was horrible, and the lucidity in their eyes was nightmarish. They were aware of what was happening at that moment. I slammed the lid shut, my hands shaking uncontrollably. The latches clicked back into place one by one, each sound like a gunshot in the silent warehouse. I backed away from the container, bile rising in my throat. That person was conscious, trapped in that frozen coffin while their body was being transported for God knows what horrible transformation. I staggered back, horrified and frozen in fear. My terrified stupor broke when I heard the intercom flare to life. "New guy, hope you're finishing it up with that truck in Bay B. We have a special shipment inbound in Bay C. Get over there as soon as you're done." Matt's voice died down on the intercom, and I knew I had to move quickly. I wheeled the containers into cold storage, my mind still reeling from what I'd seen. The frigid air bit at my exposed skin, but I navigated through the maze of shelving units, each one holding dozens of identical black boxes. How many people were trapped inside? How many were still cautious, aware of their fate? As I pushed deeper into the storage area, trying to find a space for the final container, I noticed a section I hadn't seen before. A heavy chain-link partition separated it from the main storage area with a sign that read, "Authorized security personnel only." My breath caught in my throat. Through the frosty air, I could make out rows of containers that looked slightly different from the others, their surfaces marred with warning labels and red tags. I knew I shouldn't go closer. Every instinct screamed to turn around, to forget what I'd seen, but something pulled me forward, past the unlocked gate and into the restricted section. I looked for cameras and did not see any in there, and moved further in. The temperature dropped even further here, cold enough that my breath formed crystals in the air. The first few containers were sealed tight, identical to the others except for their red tags. But the last one in the row was different. The lid was slightly ajar, as if someone had closed it in haste. And from the narrow gap, a human hand protruded, frozen in a desperate, reaching gesture. I approached slowly, my heart hammering against my ribs. The hand was feminine, with chipped black nail polish, and around the wrist, a familiar dragon tattoo. My heart sank. I recognized that tattoo immediately. I grasped the edge of the container's lid and pulled it open wider. The hydraulic hinges resisted at first, then gave way with a soft hiss of escaping gas. More of that amber fluid glistened inside, partially crystallized, but not completely frozen. And there she was. Lisa, the woman who had held me at gunpoint just hours ago, now suspended in that viscous amber. Her eyes were closed, her face peaceful in a way that seemed cruelly deceptive given the circumstances. Unlike the previous container I'd opened, her body appeared untouched, no mechanical additions or surgical alterations. Yet. A label affixed to the inside of the lid caught my attention. Dissident, processing pending, priority alpha. My stomach lurched as the full implications hit me. This wasn't just some evil operation shipping body parts. They were actively capturing people who caused trouble, who asked questions, who came looking for missing loved ones. They were turning them into something horrible. As I stared down at Lisa's frozen form, her eyes suddenly snapped open, just like the other one had. Recognition flickered in their depths, followed by naked terror. Her mouth opened in a silent scream, trapped within the semi-solid amber. She was alive. I needed to get her out. I reached for her, but the amber liquid had frozen enough where I could not just pull her out. As I searched for something to break it, I panicked when I heard Matt's annoyed voice by the cold storage entrance. "What's taking so long? We need to get to Base C for a priority shipment. Is everything all right in there?" I stole a final glance at Lisa's pleading eyes and stepped away, unable to help without risking our lives. I had to leave her for now to focus on the priority shipment. I exited the secure section, pretending to put away a black box when Matt noticed me. "There you are. We need to move quickly. Drop what you're doing and come on. You can finish it later." I nodded my head and followed. Matt seemed oddly nervous, and it felt like there was something he was not telling me. I looked back at cold storage once and grimaced. Then followed Matt to the loading bay where the priority shipment awaited. When I arrived, Matt was already waiting with Jean. Both of them were standing stiffly and focused on the truck at the platform. This truck was unlike any other. It was adorned with intricate details that set it apart. The trim gleamed more brightly against the deep black paint, catching the light and casting a sharp contrast. An unusually elaborate decal graced its side, a delicate pattern that resembled fine filigree, swirling elegantly and adding a touch of sophistication to the otherwise industrial vehicle. "You're late," Matt muttered without turning his head. "Sorry. Just get in position," he interrupted, pointing to a spot on the opposite side of the dock from Jean. "This is a special delivery, category red." I remembered the implications of the red containers and nearly froze. I had seen some on other trucks, and I wondered what was so special about this one. I glanced at Jean, whose face had gone completely expressionless, though I noticed her knuckles were white where she gripped her clipboard. "What do I need to—" I began. "Stand there, don't speak, don't touch anything unless I tell you to," Matt finished, his tone leaving no room for argument. The driver's door of the truck opened, and a figure stepped out. At first, I thought it was a man in an unusually formal suit, but as he approached, I realized this was no ordinary delivery driver. He stood well over 6 feet tall, gaunt to the point of emaciation, with pale skin stretched too tightly over sharp cheekbones. His movements were precise, almost mechanical, and his expensive-looking suit hung on his frame like it was tailored for someone with more flesh. "Mr. Jaspen," Matt said, his voice suddenly formal. "We weren't expecting you personally tonight." The tall man's lips curved into what might have been a smile.
"Circumstances require my presence, Matthew."
His voice was cultured, smooth as silk, but with an underlying quality that made my skin crawl.
"This particular shipment is of exceptional importance."
He turned his gaze on me, and I felt a chill run down my spine. His eyes were an unusual shade of gray that seemed to shift like mercury under the harsh dock lights.
"And who might this be?"
he asked, examining me with the clinical detachment of a scientist studying a specimen. "The new handler," Matt replied tersely. "Started this week."
"I see."
Mr. Jaspen approached me, his footsteps making no sound at all. He extended a hand that looked too long, the fingers too thin.
"Henry Jaspen, proprietor of the Proud Tailor."
As I shook his hand, I noticed his skin was cool and dry, almost like touching fine-grained leather rather than human flesh. Instinctively, I told him my name, regretting it instantly when I saw Jean's eyes widen slightly in alarm. Something told me giving this man my real name was a mistake. He smiled and spoke again.
"Pleasure to meet you, good sir. I do hope you'll be more durable than your predecessor."
Before I could respond, Mr. Jaspen turned sharply and strode to the back of the truck. He produced a small silver key from his pocket and inserted it into what looked like a standard padlock, but when he turned it, the entire rear section of the truck seemed to shimmer, like heat waves rising from pavement.
"Matthew, if you would assist me,"
he called, gesturing with one elongated finger. Matt immediately moved to help, leaving Jean and me standing awkwardly at the loading dock. The rear doors of the truck swung open silently, revealing a cargo area that seemed impossibly deep given the dimensions of the vehicle. Inside was a single container, larger than any I'd seen before. Unlike the black boxes we'd processed earlier, this one was a deep crimson color with intricate gold filigree etched across its surface. It looked more like an antique chest than a shipping container, and unlike the others. Matt and Mr. Jaspen carefully maneuvered the container onto the loading dock. It moved with surprising lightness for its size, as if whatever was inside weighed almost nothing. Once it was off the truck, Matt leaned in and whispered something to Mr. Jaspen. He nodded his head and looked back at us. I felt Jean's elbow dig sharply into my ribs, snapping me back to awareness. I realized I'd been staring. I quickly composed myself and adopted what I hoped was a neutral expression, but it was too late. Mr. Jaspen had noticed.
Fascinating, isn't it?
He said, his voice like velvet wrapped around a blade.
One of my finest works in progress. Would you like a sneak peek?
I swallowed hard, unable to look away from the container. The strange buzzing sound was audible now, and it nearly overwhelmed me. No, I shouldn't. We are not allowed to look in the boxes, I managed to say, my voice steadier than I expected. Mr. Jaspen's smile widened, revealing teeth that were too white, too perfect.
Indeed. I see you were trained well, but in this case we can make an exception. After all, Matthew might be in charge here, but I am in charge of Matthew. So please, indulge me.
He laughed a harsh and brittle chuckle that made me wince, and Matt looked on, grinding his teeth while looking uncomfortable.
Now come. You will see that each piece is unique. Custom tailored, you might say.
He ran one long finger along the edge of the container.
This particular model requires special handling. It will reside in our secure storage until completion.
Matt cleared his throat. I'll take it to the secure cold storage unit myself, sir.
No,
Mr. Jaspen said sharply, his eyes never leaving my face.
I believe our new hire should assist me. A learning opportunity. Wouldn't you agree?
I felt Jean tense beside me, though her expression remained neutral. Matt's face darkened with what might have been concern, but he nodded stiffly. Of course, sir. However you prefer to handle this. Mr. Jaspen gestured for me to take the other end of the cart.
Shall we? The night grows old. Away to the workshop.
With no reasonable way to refuse, I moved the cart and helped guide it as Mr. Jaspen led us deeper into the warehouse, towards the special storage area and whatever terrible revelations lay in wait. And there ends part 3, with our cast barely intact and management still nowhere to be found. Well, you've braved malfunctioning equipment, unspeakable cargo, and the slow realization that the employee handbook could be written in blood. Next week, we finish what should have never begun. Shipping and handling concludes in part 4 with the same cast of poor souls. They've worked double shifts to bring this tale to life and to death. As for me, I'll be where I always am, between the aisles, behind the plastic sheeting, and just outside the range of the security cameras. Until then, I'm Lucius Voss, reminding you, boxes are safer when sealed, and so are people. Good night.